Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. We'll be talking about AEW Dynamite from January the 4th, 2023. But there's a lot of notes. There's a lot of notes. A lot. All right. So lock in, get a beverage, maybe get some chips or something like that. I had some barbecue Fritos. I'm not supposed to be eating chips, but God, come on, man. Cut me some slack. I had to watch this show. All right. Okay. First, let's start with the easy one first, and then we'll get progressively more complicated as things goes on. Okay, simple. Matt Hardy is not sure that Jeff will even be returning to wrestling. I said before that I don't think Jeff should wrestle anymore. Matt is unsure about whether his brothers are going to return or not. As usual, Matt is speaking on behalf of Jeff, which I typically don't like. But I think it's a fair assessment to make that, Jeff has been going through rehab. He's been gone. He's been gone for a long time. For the record, Jeff Hardy was at one point signed to AEW in early 2022, and what was supposed to be a game changer, what was supposed to be a big deal, and he was there less than 4 months, I think, before he got arrested for a DUI, and he's been gone since June. I think it is. It's either been June or August. It's been gone since the summer. So it's been very difficult, and people have completely forgotten about Jeff. And now it's coming out that Jeff might not be returning to wrestling, which I think is for the best. I don't think he probably just don't need that abuse on his body. I was saying that before. I was saying it in terms of maybe the fan base and the promoters need to sort of start blocking Jeff and say, no, Jeff. But it seems like this was the right decision. Now, of course, Matt doesn't know everything. So it's not 100% Jeff isn't coming back. But I think that if it takes for Jeff to retire to stay clean, then it's the right thing. And hopefully he can get a farewell match out of this. If not, if he absolutely should not be taking bumps, then I'm all for him retiring and not wanting to do this anymore. Jeff Hardy's been wrestling since 1994, maybe since the early 90s. Actually, the early 90s, 92 or something like that. He's older than he looks. He's older than a lot of people think he is. He's in his mid 40s. His body's been beat to hell. And that's before we even start talking about the drugs and the alcohol. So if he can't go anymore, I'm perfectly okay with Jeff retiring. All right, I'm not going to elaborate on that with too much more. Here's another note. Jake Roberts wishes AEW would use him to help talent with interviews. Oh me, oh my, another older talent coming out saying, hey, it would be nice if, I could get the young guys to listen, to me. But, nope. So here's what he had to say. There's not much interaction with the younger talent. There are a few guys at AEW that welcome me being there. Everyone is kind, don't get me wrong, but that's it. I like so much more. I wish AEW would use me in a position where I was helping people with interviews because I do know how to do that. And I can certainly help a few people that are struggling. And there are a few people that struggle. You can always get better on interviews. You're never great. Dory Funk once told me, if you ever think you've had the perfect match, and this is how I feel about interviews, that then you should go backstage, take off your trunks, take off your boots, put them in a pile, spray lighter fluid on them. You don't deserve to be in the ring anymore if you think you've had a perfect match. There is no such thing as a perfect match. You can always make it better. Same thing with interviews. So, how many times have these guys been hired to be coaches and then it comes out, either it slips out or somebody just out and out tweets it or they're asked in an interview or something like that? This came from Jake Roberts' podcast too, for the record, by mistake. That they're not utilizing the older talent. So it seems to me that they're just using guys like Jake Roberts and Tully Blanchard and all these people for just clout on television. That's really what it boils down to. It's this guy's down with us kind of thing because they're not utilizing this talent, apparently. What has Jake Roberts been doing there all this time? He hasn't even been on TV. Was he on TV at all in 2022? He's still under contract and he wasn't on TV at all in 2022 and you're not using him backstage? What on earth is going on? Seems ridiculous to me, dog. And it's been Jim Ross. It's been Billy Gunn. It's been, I forget who else. It might have been somebody else. I forget who. There's been so many. I think like Big Show or somebody like that. There's so many people. Mark Henry has come out and said it. The young guys don't want to listen. And older guys are just standing around. You know, they're just kind of standing around there watching the business go by. Like, hey, you know, how you doing? Oh, not much. Doing okay, I guess. You know, it's weird. I have no idea what's happening in AEW, but they're just using old talent for on-screen clout. They're not actually using them for anything. Speaking of only using them for on-screen clout, William Regal is officially back with WWE as of January the 4th. So December 30th was his last official day with AEW, and he tweeted out thus: "Yesterday was my last official day with AEW. I'd like to thank Tony Khan, Mega, and all the hardworking crew. Contrary to people who've never spoken to me or have their information from people who don't know me or are trying to make themselves noticed, I had a lovely time working there and had a great time. Lots of talented wrestlers and lovely people to work for. To my fellow BCC members, it was special, albeit brief, few months, but it cemented our already strong friendship. To everyone there, thank you for welcoming me. Best wishes." Very classy on behalf of William Regal to say goodbye to AEW. And, you know, interesting wording. But it was fine as far as I'm concerned. Okay, now we have to get a little bit more complicated as we talk about Sammy Guevara, Ty Conti, AEW, and AAA. So the following information is going to be coming from Lucha Blog, who is a Mexican pro wrestling journalist. So on the same night that Dragon Lee announced that he was going to WWE and won the AAA Tag Team Championships from FTR, on the undercard, Sammy Guevara and Ty Mello, were stripped of the AAA Intergender Tag Team Championships, and they were given to another team. Now, because this happened in the shadow of Dragon Lee, a lot of people are not talking about it. But here is a write-up from Lucha Blog on what occurred on this situation. First, the match itself, it says, Bismo Negro Jr. and Flammer defeated Lady Shiny and Octagon Jr. and Commander and Sexy Star in a AAA Mixed Tag Championship match. Scheduled to be Sammy and Tay defending, they worked AEW instead. Conan announced the belts as vacant. The physical belts were still in AEW. Flammer and Abismo Jr. were replacements and won the titles. So here's his write-up of it. Was buried underneath all the Dragon Lee stuff. It says, quote, "The flip side is AAA's relationship with AEW seems like it's changing, if not totally going away. Dave Meltzer in this week's Wrestling Observer newsletter says AAA will no longer book AEW wrestlers to win champions because they just can't reliably get dates on them. The Wrestling Observer newsletter notes Sammy Guevara and Ty Mello weren't actually scheduled to lose their titles on Noches de Campeones because AAA had planned on doing a surprise title change in Madero, which they also missed. Abismo Negro Jr. and Flammer would have won the belts a few days earlier under that plan. Conan's speech stripping Mello and Guevara of the tag team titles got attention because Conan said that the AEW couple had made ridiculous demands. And people not watching the show failed to understand that was a storyline bit." Let's pause it right here. This was Sammy Guevara. He tweeted out something in relation to this. And he ended up deleting it. But he basically was playing along like, you know, they was asking for all yellow M&Ms and that kind of stuff. And they were basically being divas. And that led Conan to stripping them of the titles. So he was playing along, but then he deleted the comment. So clearly some funny business was going on. So here is the continuance. It says, Konnan also said Guevara and Melo had missed 3 shows, specifically, not 2. That didn't seem to be a storyline, and I'm not sure what the 3rd show would have been. He said it also blends into AAA and FTR and stuff like that, so I'm going to continue reading it. He says, we also don't know how many shows FTR were scheduled to be yet, but for sure the plan couldn't have been for them to disappear between March and December. It certainly felt like AAA couldn't switch the titles off of them until AEW had their ROH title change, though I don't know that for a fact. FTR still could have come back and defended them against random teams, same as NGD, and there are no answers given as to why that didn't happen. The Wrestling Observer newsletter notes Kenny Omega is an exception as a title holder for AAA, feeling that he's so valuable that they put the Mega Championship on him if he was interested and just deal with the consequences. The report is also clear that AAA remain interested in bringing AEW wrestlers outside of title matches, and maybe just for one-offs, like they did with the Young Bucks in Monterey and tried to do with the Hardys in Tijuana. Putting AAA championships on AEW was a miserable failure. It's great AAA has realized that and will stop doing that. They've also got to look at it just not being an AEW issue. Flammer's probably a mixed tag team champion in part because Tay's not around to do her title match with Flammer. AAA had similar problems getting dates with Deonna Purrazzo as champion. AAA probably doesn't consider Phoenix or Penta AEW wrestlers, but they couldn't get Phoenix in for his last title defense. AAA is not a big deal outside of Mexico. It's not a place where a foreign star can become a bigger star. And so either AAA's go to for people who don't have as many options in the US, like CML sort of done, or just focus on people based in Mexico. AEW pulling people off a New Japan World pay-per-view would have the internet up in arms. AEW pulling people off a AAA pay-per-view had the internet shrugging their shoulders and hoping AEW would just switch to working with CMLL instead. It's part AAA presenting themselves as a mess often, so most figured this must be AAA's fault somehow, and part just disinterest. So, as we see here, apparently there was an issue. I think Konnan made a comment that Ty Mello was pulled from for starters, Sammy Guevara, when they won the titles, was injured because he had gotten injured in a match. I forget which match it was, so Ty did all the work. Then later on, Tay was pulled from a show because someone else in AAA got COVID, so Tony Khan pulled her. And apparently they've just had hella troubles getting Ty Conti or Ty Mello and Sammy Guevara in Mexico. So it's not looking very good. Keeping it 100, Konnan has talked about, he has had some stiff words for AEW over the last couple of weeks on his show. Nothing out of the ordinary. He just kind of criticizes it similar to how he's always criticized it. But, people have asked questions about this kind of stuff, like what's going on. And there's not much you can do because, AAA is a little spoon in this situation, but it says a lot that, this situation continues to occur and people are not paying attention. I just can't believe we got to go through all this for Sammy Guevara. The same Sammy Guevara, by the way, who almost screwed up the AEW Impact relationship. What was this, 2 years ago when he refused to do creative and got sent back home. I don't know how many of you remember that, but Sammy Guevara is not like some huge star in the wrestling business that he should be, treating people the way that he does, but apparently, this guy is the fucking Rock, or he's Stone Cold Steve Austin or something like that. But in any event, I think maybe people should stop trying to give Sammy Guevara money. He's a waste of time anyway, right? But the relationship between AAA and AEW has deteriorated quite a bit, and it's it's sad, but it should not be that much of a surprise. This has always been the issue when it comes to talent trades. And fans continuously talk about, oh, wouldn't it be great if everybody could just work together, until it's time to really start working together. And then, you know, I want to beat those guys on my show first, which is what AEW did with Kenny Omega when he was working with Impact. They had him lose to Christian first. And then, you know, they just basically swapped Christian and Kenny Omega and sent Christian to Impact to do that world title thing and dropped the belt to Josh Alexander because they were protecting Kenny Omega. As you can see, they did something similar here. Kenny Omega was banged up and injured, and they basically just coughed up the Omega title. They didn't lose it to a Mexican guy at all, just kind of dropped it. And now you see how they treating AAA's other belts. You know, they lucky AAA is not only a smaller promotion that's based in Mexico, but the AAA doesn't really care that much about these titles. There's only so much shit they could put up with. I mean, FTR disappeared between March and December, and nobody, which was around the same time they disappeared in AEW, you know, so it's a difficult situation, and it's really truly sad that they had to go through all this crap. But all right, another little note. Dave Shearer on PW Insider, he was asked a question about something that I believe I saw it, but I thought it was too radical and didn't really buy into it. So here's the question and the answer. This is from PW Insider. This is from their Q&A section. It says, quote, "We saw Samuel Guevara cover his mouth in Jon Moxley's blood, then proceed to tongue-kiss Tay Mello, thus transferring Moxley's blood from his mouth to his wife's. Never mind how disgusting this is, it is also a huge health risk, given what we know about the transmission of blood-borne illnesses. If Tony seemingly has no problem with this kind of thing, is he ensuring that the wrestlers are regularly tested for transmissible diseases? If he isn't testing them and he continues to allow his wrestlers to lick other people's blood, it's only a matter of time before someone becomes seriously ill as a result." This apparently is from the match Sammy Guevara and Jon Moxley had on Rampage, where I think they pulled out Jon Moxley's earring. I believed I saw that, but I mentally blocked it because it's fucking Rampage and I don't care about Rampage. But this is gross, for the record. It's weird. It's weird that they would do this. I don't know why you would do it. What is the goal of this? To prove what exactly? Why is Sammy Guevara's character the kind of character that is smearing himself in blood? I don't know. Here was Dave Shearer's response. They have always said that they test the wrestlers, but even so, a test can miss something. That whole segment was disgusting. I turned off the show after I saw it. I don't get paid enough to watch garbage like that, and it is garbage. Dave Shearer is against blood in wrestling, for the record. So that was the reason why he he seemingly is very triggered by this whole thing. All right, so I was going to save this, and I decided not to, because the match is tonight. So why save it for Thursday? So apparently, as I said last week, when the Acclaimed made those jokes about Kurt Angle and Jeff Jarrett, I said it was probably not a good idea. I was certain it was not a good idea. And we now see that it was not a good idea. So Karen Jarrett, the wife of Jeff Jarrett, decided to go on Twitter and really just kind of have a meltdown. After this was almost a week after the comments were made after the rap. So she said in a series of tweets, "We can start here. My marriage to Kurt was over long before Jeff and I started seeing each other. Maybe Kurt will think twice before making threats, insulting, disrespecting my husband. I am done living in fear. I have 24 years of dirt. I am ready to start unloading. I am done. Hashtag moving on." She says, "Funny and sad how all of that has been swept under the rug over all these years. Jeff didn't steal me from anyone. hashtag Dawn Marie, hashtag Kelly Kelly, hashtag Dean Naidson, to name a few. In other words, she's saying that Kurt Angle was having affairs while he was in WWE. She then said, later said, she said, we were legally separated at the time Kurt signed with TNA, living in different homes. We got back together and I tried to get over the affairs, among other things that went on in our marriage, but obviously wasn't able. So, at this point, it's an issue. So Kelly tweets out, I keep getting linked in this tweet, but I have DM'd Karen Jarrett to privately ask her and I'm waiting for a response. But I want to go ahead in public and make a statement that only way I can be linked to Kurt is we were co-workers. Sorry, but thanks for the Monday morning entertainment. So she's denying that she had an affair with Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle then tweeted out that it was tweeted and deleted that he doesn't want his name used for clout on AEW television. Then the big one happened as Jeff Jarrett apparently got upset and said that there's going to be some receipts. So, oh boy. Oh Lord. So on his podcast, because everybody has a podcast, I just realized, Jeff Jarrett said this, quote, I've heard a bunch of old timers live by the creed, don't mess with my family and don't mess with my money. Max did both. He messed with my family and my money. Karen is a personality, but not with AEW. The whole idea that I'm stealing Kurt Angle's wife, that is a generation removed. And I want to set the record straight here. I've kept my mouth shut 10, 12 years for two reasons. Kyra Angle and Cody Angle. They're old enough now. They know the absolute truth. But me stealing Kurt's wife is the furthest thing from the truth. The fact of the matter is, when we hired Kurt Angle, me and Dixie Carter, because she's a part of this story, they were legally separated, and they weren't living under the same roof. Enough is enough. We're 13 years removed from this. Kurt Angle was also frustrated, saying that hashtag move on, and they're basically all sick and tired of this crap. So, Jeff Jarrett then later says that there's going to be some receipts for Max Caster's rap. Anthony Bowens then tweeted out a little bit later on January the 3rd. I'm not for airing personal stuff on Twitter, but Kurt Angle is the man, and I respect him and his accomplishments way more than I ever will Jeff Jarrett. I just caught the podcast. If you take any liberties with Caster tomorrow night, there's going to be a problem. So, maybe we ought to not be doing work shoot promos. How many times have these guys in AEW gotten themselves into all of this crap by either being chatty patties and talking too much or doing work shoot promos? And it seems like this feels like something that would have been run by Jeff Jarrett before it made air. You know, it just feels like that's something that would have been run by Jeff Jarrett. And even, but as we know from the Will Smith situation, even if Jeff Jarrett was like, it's all right, it's not that big a deal. Once Karen had a problem with it, now he's got a problem with it. So he can't just say, it's A-OK, thumbs up, you can say whatever you want, kid, because he doesn't know how the other people in this story are going to respond. And this is why you shouldn't do the shit that they're doing. You sent this guy. Max Caster is a young wrestler who, grew up with the story that Karen and Jeff were sneaking around behind Kurt's back. And that's the story that was floating around in the dirt, because I remember when it happened. I remember when Jeff was sent home for this and apparently lying about it. I know that that's the story that's been floating around for years. Is it true? I don't know. I don't care. The facts remains, this is what Max Caster, when he sat down to write his rap, that what was going through his mind. The TNA story of Karen Jarrett and Jeff Jarrett and their relationship, and the Kurt Angle stuff. And this ended up being the reason why Jeff was excused from his position by Dixie Carter. Whether that's true or not, that's the story that's been out there all this time. So he sat down to write this rap and he used that against Jeff. Even if, and I'll say it again, even if Jeff Jarrett gave him the thumbs up and said it was okay, he probably did not know Karen was going to act up the way she did. and did not know Kurt Angle was going to have to come out and say what he said. And now you've upset all of these people because now she's throwing Dawn Marie under the bus. She's calling out Kelly Kelly. She's talking about how Kelly Kelly fucked her husband, and Kelly Kelly has to come out and deny that. Dawn Marie hasn't said anything to my knowledge about this whole thing. People are, of course, making jokes about Dawn Marie fucking everybody in the locker room. Same thing with Kelly Kelly. It's been an absolute disaster. It all came about because somebody decided to write a rap, a quote-unquote work shoot promo. It's goofy. And probably this has been one of the many things that has done each time they do this in AEW. It's not been just somebody got a little bit peeved. It's almost always turned into a public problem. Almost every single time. Even when we didn't know it was a work shoot promo, like the Hangman Page CM Punk comment. Even when people don't know it, it still becomes a big, big issue that people take what other people said personally. I mean, there have been people who have fought each other backstage because Sammy Guevara called Eddie Kingston fat in a promo. You know, they got into a fight backstage. It's almost as if this place is run by unprofessional idiots, you know? Even if you're going to make this comment, you really should make sure that everybody involved is going to be okay with it. Or just don't make the comment. I can understand why Max Caster would do it, but this is where his bosses and the people above him should have been, a little bit more diligent, especially since these people don't work there. Especially since Karen Jarrett does not work there. Kurt Angle, it does not work there. Too many people who are involved with this story are not involved with your storyline. So they just hear their name was mentioned on TV and they go and look it up and they see that it's this shit. And now they're mad. So it's goofy. They need to stop it. But at least it put some heat on the match, It successfully did that. It successfully put the heat on the match. All right, one last thing before we go and get into this review. Apparently, I talked about this on the Wrestle Kingdom thing, so I really don't need to mention it too much here. But Dax Harwood is not making friends with his podcast. In any event, CM Punk retweeted out the WrestleNomics graph that all of his segments on AEW are the highest viewed on YouTube, and his merchandise sales and all this kind of stuff, basically touting his success in AEW. And it was interesting, to say the least, that apparently he still cares. He's still open and he still cares, but it's kind of been rubbing it in the face of some people who don't want him in AEW anymore. And apparently Chris Jericho is one of those people, because I think almost immediately after the Dax Harwood episode of his podcast came out, there was yet another story that came out saying that influential people within AEW don't want CM Punk in the company, which basically just reiterates what we said before about, Chris Jericho and maybe some other people really not being a fan of CM Punk and his backstage demeanor. And nothing's changed, apparently, and he's not ingratiating himself to those people by, sort of mocking them on Twitter, or on Instagram, rather. But I'm pretty sure he doesn't give a shit. He's probably getting paid anyway, and things are gonna go on as they go, I guess. So, but let's finally get into this Dynamite review. All right, let's get into Dynamite finally. Okay. So the new set looks expensive. Looks a lot like an old Raw set, though. They got Dasha Fuentes. I think that's what her name is. She's doing the ring announcing now. I actually like the change in ring announcers. I would like it if they kind of alternated. Some weeks is Justin Roberts, some weeks is Dasha Fuentes, and that would be fine. But the new set, it looks like a WWE set. So I don't have a problem with it, really. The Trons are huge. It's kind of clean. Everything else is pretty much the same, including the terrible audio. But we'll get to that in a moment. Chris Jericho is defeated by Ricky Starks. The crowd made this match. The crowd was absolutely electric for pretty much everything on this show. And this match specifically got a lot out of that audience. For starters, Aubrey Edwards was wearing a distracting amount of eyeshadow. She has like these green globs around her face. And I just couldn't stop looking at it. It's the brightest thing on the screen. So it's like really catching your eye. And I'm like, oh no, why is she doing this? Anyway, Ricky Starks got suplexed off the ring apron. That was nutty. And considering he wasn't really working the back area, it just seemed random that he would do a suplex off the ring apron because he can, because he's Chris Jericho. Ricky Starks did old school. Okay. It was nice. The big spot, of course, was Jericho getting the walls of Jericho. I mean, the crowd was just incredible for this. Fat 2.0, I think it was, ended up hitting Ricky Starks in the face with a bat, kind of just poking him in the face. And they did the old Ricky Starks is going to pass out spot. The referee had her back turned. So it ended up not being the finish. They did the old raise of the arm and it comes down. And then on the third one, Ricky Starks powered up, which I thought was great. Great way to get out of that spot to tell that story. Of course, unfortunately, they just had Ricky Starks power out of the walls of Jericho. I mean, a guy is sitting on your back and you managed to not only force him up, but then turn over. A little unbelievable. Maybe he should have just grabbed the rope. You know, it's always sometimes simpler things are, people are not going to be angry at you if you grab the rope. You're a babyface. We're expecting you to play by the rules. And plus he was near the ropes anyway. So if he'd have grabbed the ropes just to break the hold, and then fought Jericho off, that'd have been a little bit different than him, because nobody believes that your lower body is that strong that you can fight off a 240-pound man who's sitting on your back. Nobody believes that. If you were bigger, maybe, but he's small, so nobody believes that. Anyway, Ricky Starks ends up winning with the spear. Okay. I expected Ricky Starks to win, so that's good. The Jericho Appreciation Society then jumped Ricky Starks after the match. They beat his ass. Action Andretti ran down to the ring with makeup on his face. It looked like he got hit in the face with a pizza or something like that. He's breathing fire and chasing people with chairs and hitting people with chairs, and that was all nice. Then he got jumped by the JAS too. He got beat up. I thought a third person was going to come out there and save them, but nope. What ends up happening is Hager with his very skinny legs. And I didn't know he had legs that skinny, but he power bombs Ricky Starks through a table off the ring apron. Oh boy. It was a bit extra, to have like 500 people jump these two guys, but it was just Jericho getting his heat back, considering he's lost like 2 or 3 matches in a row. It makes sense that, we're going to try to get his heat back and we're going to continue this feud. So, okay. Ricky Starks, I'm guessing he's still in this spot. He's going to be dealing with Jericho for a while. Andretti, they just brought him right back. They didn't try to play the sympathy card or anything. Just brought him back with a chair, and I'm still going to hope that they go the sympathy route and say that, this guy missed Christmas because he got hit in the face with a fireball, but it doesn't seem to be the case. He wasn't really even selling the eye either. They didn't try to put bandages on it or anything. They just kind of send him out there with a burn mark on his face. Okay, sure. I mean, he got hit in the face with a fire with a flame 2 months ago. Apparently, it was 2 weeks ago. That sucks. We should have been definitely missed opportunity there with Andretti. I don't know how I feel about the Andretti kid yet. It's just they're doing a lot with him very fast. Jericho, he's still working with Starks, so that's good. Good for Starks anyway, because at least the people will stay here. And the match was over as hell, and Ricky Starks won because Jericho knows when to win and when to lose. So all of this kind of went off fine, and the crowd was really hot for it. Crowd made it. All right, so Hangman Page comes out. Oh boy, things went off the rails in this joint, and it was funny. So for starters, let's just get out the way. Hangman is not medically cleared, but will be medically cleared next week, and will be having his match with Moxley next week rather than fighting Moxley this week. And he threatened to put Jon Moxley's dick in the dirt. He's going to put his dick in the dirt. I've heard that quite a few times over the course of my life. Almost every time somebody has ever said, I'm going to put your dick in the dirt, it has been by somebody who is vastly more threatening than Hangman Page. I'm saying when he said it, I didn't believe him. That's all. That's all I'm saying. Also, why is he talking about this man's dick? Anyway, Moxley comes out there to protect his dick, apparently. He says exactly 2 lines before the crowd starts to chant, "We can't hear you." So Moxley steps back, as if like, take 2. And then he comes out, he says the exact same verbiage again, which tells you that he definitely wrote this promo. So he's cutting this promo again. The crowd still can't hear him. He starts patting the microphone. The audio cuts out. He cusses in the microphone. What the fuck? So we can hear him on TV. The crowd can't hear him. And he's frustrated. He's very frustrated because the audio, despite how expensive the Trons and everything are now, the AEW Achilles heel since episode 1 has been their audio. I don't understand how AEW cannot get their audio correct. Since the first episode of this program, this is a multi-tens of $million program, and they cannot get their audio together. 3 years in, 4 years in, they still can't get their audio together. I don't get it. Anyway, Moxley eventually powers through the promo, saying that he's sick of the sympathy for Hangman Page because nobody has been through more than him. Nobody has done more damage to their body or put up with more shit than he has. And he says that he's sick of the victim narrative. So Hangman says that this is not about getting knocked out. He's been knocked out by friends. He's been knocked out by opponents. He's been knocked out more times than he can think. It's not about that. It's that when he came to talk to Moxley about it, Moxley made a joke. And he didn't like that. He didn't like that Moxley felt like it was a joking situation. So then said that, wait a minute. I thought he was upset because he couldn't remember his son's name. That's what I thought he was upset about. Now he's upset because Jon Moxley made a joke about him. See, this is why the inconsistency here? You had a good reason to want to beat this man's ass. You say, oh, he knocked me out. I couldn't remember my son's name. That's kind of fucked up. But then Moxley makes fun of you for getting knocked out and telling you basically to toughen up, rub some dirt on it, you'll be okay. And you go from that to, well, it's not that I was knocked out. I've been knocked out a lot. That's no problem. The fact that I couldn't remember my kid's name, not a big deal. What was the big deal was you making a joke. I didn't like that. So anyway, Moxley says that Hangman Page doesn't belong in the ring with him. And the only joke is that Hangman Page thinks that next week is going to be any different. So then they decided to separate. And, okay. Any attempts to make Hangman Page sound tough or look tough it just don't work, And his fan base, let me tell you, man, there's just something weird about the Hangman fans. They're very strange. They're a strange bunch. They're a strange bunch. They are attracted to his vulnerability, whatever that means. And these are male wrestling fans, by the way, not female wrestling fans. Like when you look at somebody like Shawn Michaels, when he's talking about how he lost his smile, he's out there crying or whatever, that was appealing to the female fan base. These are male wrestling fans who are like, I love Hangman. He's so vulnerable and he's so open. I mean, he's like the perfect encapsulation of a human being inside of a wrestling ring. I'm like, what the fuck? Why does every Why do these guys who are like super fans of like Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay and Hangman Page, why are these guys, they come across like really limp-wristed poets? I don't get it. These guys must not watch sports. Like in a sports atmosphere, we understand that sometimes athletes cry, they get really emotional, they get really upset about stuff. That's a way of being vulnerable, but we at least believe that, this guy legitimately belongs in the situation that he finds himself in. Hangman Page, I'm not entirely sure that he belongs in the situations that he finds himself in. Like, if you are a believer in the character of Jon Moxley, how do you see Hangman Page as being a threat? What about him is threatening? You knocked him out with a clothesline without trying. This guy's finisher is to do a clothesline with a front flip in front of it. He ain't never knocked out anybody with that joint. Are you really buying into it? I don't know. Like, I'm not sure where they going wrong, but I'm thinking a lot of it is in Hangman's performance. It's just coming across as cakeish. He just comes across like a cupcake who is trying to be a tough guy. Like I said, we went from the Blackjacks and Stan Hansen and those kinds of cowboys. Even the Smoking Guns felt more like real with their cap guns. They came across as being real cowboyish rather than this fucking guy. I don't know, man. Maybe I just don't like him and I'm looking for reasons to not like him. I'm willing to accept that as an excuse, But when he said, I got 2 in the chamber with your name on it, I was like, come on, Moxley just dropped this fool on his head right now. You don't got to deal with it. Just beat his ass right now. You don't have to deal with this. I don't know. Whatever. I'm sure the match will be perfectly fine because Hangman is a perfectly serviceable pro wrestler. There's nothing wrong with his in-ring work. It's just a lot of his character. His promos aren't even that bad. It's just that I don't believe him. There's a believability problem here. There is an authenticity issue when it comes to a lot of guys on AEW. They talk tough, you don't believe it. All right. Speaking of talking tough, but you do believe it, they did a vignette for Samoa Joe. So Samoa Joe did this whole poem about, the little dead boy who could and how he's going to destroy Darby Allin and all that stuff. And I was like, yeah, this is going to be nice. And then they had the match, main event of the show, Darby Allin versus Samoa Joe. They did a movie for Darby Allin where the Seattle skyline was upside down and there was highlights of matches and skateboarding and all kinds of stuff. Crowd was electric for this, of course. Samoa Joe grabbed a guy in the crowd before the match started. Grabbed the guy, just kind of shook him. I don't know who this guy was. I don't think anybody told me who he was unless I wasn't paying attention. But Darby Allin jumped out the ring, fought Samoa Joe rather. Then he got a ladder, retrieved the ladder, jumped off the ladder onto Samoa Joe all before the match started. Then they got in the ring and the match started. The match itself was okay. And then we got the bulletproof midget moments where Joe has him in the coquina clutch and Darby Allin just starts beating his chest and got out of it. And I'm just, yeah, that's Samoa Joe's finish. And this incredibly small, invincible midget just starts beating his chest and got out of the move. Then, of course, despite the fact that Samoa Joe's literally twice his size, Darby Allin did a code red on Samoa Joe, which means he flipped Samoa Joe over, which is physically impossible for him to do. Unless he has superpowers or a crane. He's not moving Samoa Joe. He's not flipping him over. But it happened. Then he uses 2 coffin drops to win the title. I was shaking. This reminds me of 2 years ago, I think it was, when they had Darby go full invincible midget against Brian Cage And I was like, this killed Brian Cage. And it kind of did, if we be honest. They was going through this spell where guys were just dropping Darby Allin from orbit, and he was still getting up. It didn't matter what happened to him. They were shooting him out of a cannon into the wall. He was still kicking out. And I was just kind of like, what the fuck? You know, like, it's okay for him to win, but we can't bury the big guy and letting the little guy win. That's not how we can. It was too legitimate. And now I feel like we're right back here with this situation. Now, over the last year, I've said a lot about Darby Allin being, kind of an afterthought in AEW. So they kind of tried to turn it around. So they had him cut this promo with Sting about how he needs to do this. And, Sting and Darby cut this really good promo. It was on Rampage. I don't remember it that well, but I remember really thinking that it was a good promo. And it played into this match. How, should Darby give up or should Darby keep going? Do you believe that Darby can do it? And Sting says, well, I don't want to be the guy to tell you you can't do it. Like, I'm not going to be that guy. You're not putting that in my lap, kid. So I get where they were going with this. But it seems very sudden, incredibly sudden, considering Joe just mopped the floor with a guy twice the size of Darby Allin. He literally just mopped the floor with Wardlow just to lose to the midget the very next week in overly convincing fashion. It was ridiculously convincing how Darby Allin beat Samoa Joe. Too convincing. And I was just like, sucks for Joe. It is what it is. I felt bad for him, to be quite honest, because Joe was doing some of the best work of his career. He's very good. But they had made up their mind that they were putting the belt on Darby in Darby's hometown, and nothing else matters. They was going to rush the damn thing, and Darby was going to get in, jumping off ladders. He was going to power out of Samoa Joe's finish. I was like, ow. He flipped the guy over. I'm like, oh, hell no. Boy. I mean, you powering out of my finish, you're flipping me over. 2 straight finishers, and I'm just gonna lay there and beat the shit. I'm like, okay, whatever. I guess the check cleared. So I need to somebody's got to explain this to me. Why did we give up on Wardlow's push to now reheat Darby Allin? What was the purpose behind that? Where's Hobbs? Why isn't Hobbs in the conversation anymore? What's happening here? But it doesn't matter anyway, because we got a bulletproof midget. The bulletproof midget is back. We went from the bulletproof midget dying to now the bulletproof midget is back. I don't know. Very weird decision making by Tony Khan. The crowd liked it, but it's the hometown guy wins in an unbelievable fashion. So I guess that's enough. Moving on quickly. Second match on the show, Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal versus The Acclaimed. They mixed Lethal and Jarrett's entrances. The entrance songs, they mixed them. Didn't hate it, didn't love it. This match was all about the heat between the two and whether the heat was real or not. Jarrett was professional. He did smack Max Caster kind of hard, though, early in the match, but not too hard where you would think that he was being disrespectful. Anyway, Max Caster rapped before the match started, saying that Jeff Jarrett's wife is getting dragged worse than Skip Bayless, and that TNA stood for Total Nonstop Acclaimed. All right. It was safer this week than it was last week. The match itself was nothing really to write home about. Singh and Dutt were outside the ring getting involved. The referee then called out 5 of the tiniest refs ever to eject Singh and Dutt from the ringside. At one point, Lethal and Jarrett actually got the pinfall win because one of the members of the Acclaim was pinned, and Sanjay Dutt popped his foot off of the bottom rope. So I knew immediately they were going into a dusty finish. Dasha Fuentes, she announced almost immediately that Jarrett and Lethal were the new tag team champions, but it took them forever to leave the arena, so I knew they were going to overturn the decision. Aubrey Edwards ran down to the ring and coaxed the referee into reversing the decision, which he ended up doing. And that left for the Acclaimed to get the win later on a counter roll-up. In a post-match promo, what was it, probably about 20 to 30 minutes later, it was announced that Battle of the Belts 5 is going to be the Acclaimed versus Lethal and Jarrett No Holds Barred, to which Jarrett said that they'll be the tag team champions after that. Okay, I didn't like the Dusty finish. I wasn't a big fan of it. You know, we're gonna fake give the belts to Jarrett and Lethal, and then we're just gonna reverse the decision. And of course, the baby faces are going to win once the decision's been reversed. It just felt like it was unnecessary. I understand where they were going with it because they're going with Battle of the Belts, and they had to have a screwy finish in order for to have the more definitive finish and no holds barred match. I still didn't like it though, and I didn't really like this match. I think it's probably not really the best work of the Acclaim's career. Moving on, Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter cut a promo. I finally got to hear Jamie Hayter's voice, and I already forgot what it sounds like. Collectively, they cut a promo where they said Saraya doesn't get AEW or what AEW means to them because they're homegrown talents. Britt Baker said that no matter where Saraya is looking, the best women are in AEW. Shida and Tony are two of the best women in the world. Why won't she just pick one of them? And then, of course, she says that she's the boss and Hayter's the killer, so they're the killer and the pillar. That's the name of their team now. The most interesting bit, of course, was Britt Baker saying that she was the boss, talking about herself. And, okay. So we all know where we're going with this. The teasing has finally occurred. It's even been announced on some of the, again, I call it the Congress of Wrestling Media, because everybody wants to put it out there first that, you know, Mercedes is signing with AEW. Yay! And I'm just kind of like, well, if she wasn't going to be under a WWE contract anymore, this was kind of inevitable. But whatever. I talked enough about Mercedes for one day. Saraya cut a promo with Toni Storm and Hikaru Shida. Saraya says that Britt Baker is being a gatekeeper. And she also says that this was the best roster in women's wrestling. She put over Toni Storm and Shida. Then Toni Storm said that she got screwed out of her championship and got her face fractured. And that was not cool. It was not cool. Totally not cool, I bet. You can't muster up more anger and frustration than not cool. Okay. Shida is sitting there frustrated. She didn't say anything. Saraya says that, you know, these are the two best women. So she's sitting next to the best wrestler in the world, and she wants that person to be her partner. Then she picked Toni Storm. At that point, Shida was visibly frustrated and kind of tilted her head back and was really upset that she wasn't the one that was picked. She seemed almost offended. So we're leading to a Hikaru Shida heel turn. Now, pretty much everybody with a functioning brain and an IQ over 5 can see where this is about to go. You know, Shida's going to end up attacking Toni Storm, and they're going to take Toni out of the match, and she's going to be replaced. We already know that that's coming. I appreciate that they're going to just make a story out of it. And I appreciate it because at least it's now something for Toni and Shida. Like, they're going to have a feud going forward. So it's like they're putting in effort on the women's wrestling part. You know, there's still a little bit of issues between Britt and Jamie, where they're friends now, but I'm pretty sure there's something's going to come out of this tag team match where they're going to have some more schism between the two of them. Then there's going to be some Toni Storm Shida stuff, so that ought to be nice. And then, of course, Saraya and Mercedes are going to be partners, and Saraya is going to have Mercedes back as she tries to win the title and all that kind of stuff. If they're mildly competent, this should work out for the most part and be pretty solid. So it seems like they're actually putting in some effort into the women's division. To continue that, the tag team match on the show was Jade Cargill and Red Velvet versus Sky Blue and Kiera Hogan. Kiera Hogan got absolutely zero reaction. But then why would you react to Kiera Hogan? She hasn't done anything except get fired by Jade Cargill, and that was it. They haven't built up any storylines for her. She didn't get to talk about it. Just, you're fired, and now you're an opponent. Meanwhile, they're doing a storyline with Red Velvet. So this actually, again, they're putting in effort in the women's division. Red Velvet is simply tired of Jade Cargill's shit. Jade's is very pushy. She's very cocky. And Red Velvet's kind of standing on the apron, giving her a stale face. And Jade Cargill shit talking her, putting her finger on her face. And she's tagging her by tapping her on the head, being very disrespectful. And Red Velvet basically took a walk. She jumped off the ring apron, and Jade Cargill nearly got beat before she pinned Kiera Hogan, because Kiera Hogan sucks, and clearly she can beat two people at once. So Red Velvet and Jade Cargill are going to have a thing where the baddie section apparently is over. I don't know where Layla Gray went. Where did Layla Gray go? I don't know. But apparently there's no baddies anymore. There's just going to be Jade. And Jade versus her various baddies, former baddies. Red Velvet is somebody they've been pushing in AEW since day one. So she's a day one female in AEW. I don't expect this to go any way other than Jade wins. LOL. So it is what it is. But again, they're putting in effort. The Red Velvet Jade Cargill, at least Jade Cargill is going to be involved in a storyline. Hopefully Red Velvet actually gets to talk, gets to show some emotions, and we get to see something out of Jade other than the same thing she's been doing this entire time. I appreciate that Tony Khan is preparing the locker room for the Mercedes bomb that he's about to drop in this joint. Because by having storylines now, you're going to have the women's division. The women's division is going to be a focal point. So now you might as well have storylines for it. And he seems to be planning some stuff. How long is it going to go? We don't know. So, at least right now, it seems like there's some plans in place that might actually work out. But that's going to take some time. All right. But I'm not mad at what he's doing. The Sheeta heel turn ought to be very, very cool. Sheeta needs it because she's been a babyface for far too long and, been absorbing a lot of disrespect. Toni Storm needs something to do. And she's just been bland as hell since she came to AEW, which is not entirely her fault. She's not being pushed or challenged in any way. The same thing could be said for Jade Cargill. She's not being pushed or challenged in any way. So hopefully things will change, and they can actually get some challenges and get some resistance and, get some fresh coat of paint put on them somehow, some way. All right. Where am I on this damn list? Jungle Boy. Jungle Boy says that he doesn't trust anyone, but him and Hook are going to be a tag team now, which, we all saw coming. We all saw the Hook, Jungle Boy tag team coming. So is anyone really surprised? New. They're going to be wrestling Lee Moriarty and Big Bill. This is absolute cancer. All right. This is cancerous. This is bad for your lungs, bad for your eyeballs. I don't get it. I don't understand how a guy the size of Bill ends up in this situation, but it is AEW, man. So I expect the bulletproof midgets to throw them all over the place, launch them into the sun, pull them back, then pin them flat, in the middle of the ring. No problem. That's what I expect. All right, so Bryan Danielson worked the third match on this show. He got an absolute God's welcome in his hometown. His home state, which essentially is hometown. If you're in your home state, you're pretty much in your hometown. He got to wrestle Tony Nese, which seems like a waste of time. And it was, because his promo segment was like 3 times the length of this match. Which, for the first time, I was actually surprised. But I was also like, this segment went on far too long. Tony Nese taps out in the Regal stretch. Nobody gives a shit. At this point, Bryan Danielson calls out MJF, who promptly answers. I don't understand why MJF would even respond to Bryan Danielson, but he did. He called him Brain Damaged Brian, which I kind of laughed and I wrote it down. MJF and then Bryan Danielson started getting into an argument. I'm going to try to distill a lot of this because this segment was far too long. MJF starts talking about how Danielson doesn't have any charisma. He's like the son of Dean Malenko and Lance Storm if they can somehow reproduce. He also called Bryan Danielson a mark who likes to wrestle while he is a special attraction and gets paid whether he wrestles or not. Then says that Danielson is not just because he looks like a goat does not mean he is a goat or he's not the goat or something. Then he made an allusion to Bryan Danielson's mother fucking goats, to which Danielson called MJF's mother a whore by just saying, they used the word human suitors, which I thought was funny. It felt like a Vince McMahon line. MJF started saying that Bryan Danielson's mom couldn't find any human suitors, so she was banging goats. To which Bryan Danielson said that MJF's mom has a ton of human suitors, and she has human suitors all up in that building. There's probably not a person in that building that's not one of his mom's human suitors. I thought that was funny. MJF starts talking about how he's the best because he's gotten cosigns from Jim Cornette, Eric Bischoff, and Disco Inferno. And the crowd, of course, booed all of them because why would they? And that Bryan Danielson is only the best to journalists and Mark fans. Bryan Danielson challenged MJF to a match, to which MJF said no, and Danielson has to become the number one contender, and he has to become the number one contender specifically in the way that MJF wants, which is he has to win every match until February the 8th. If he wins every match up till February the 8th, which is approximately 5 weeks away, he'll become the number one contender, and then MJF will wrestle him in March. Bryan Danielson, of course, poo-pooed that idea. They went back and forth about it before Danielson said he'll do it, but only on the condition that he gets to pick the stipulation, which he wants a 60-minute Iron Man match because he wants to expose MJF. He wants to expose that MJF doesn't have the cardio, the footwork, or the passion, that he's not the best wrestler in the world. Then he wants to kick his fucking head in. Then he wants to take his world title. Okay. Issue with this, why are we doing so much of this? How about I thought we had rankings in AEW. How is that? I thought we had rankings. There was shit in here about Danielson saying he's going to do whatever he wants. Then there was some shit about MJF saying that unless he does it the way that he wants it, he's going to have his lawyer involved. This segment just went on entirely too long. And it was just so much fluff in this. And I get it. You want to have MJF on the screen as long as possible, and Danielson. You want to have them on the screen as long as possible because they're your ratings guys. But if I didn't have to watch this segment, I probably would have clipped and I'd have looked away or something. They felt like they was talking for 25 minutes. That's what it felt like. I know it wasn't that long, but it felt longer than it really was. Why not save some of this to next week? You could have saved the whole Danielson stipulation. You could have saved that for at least at a point where we're near the pay-per-view. And he, can drop the stipulation on MJF then. Instead of dropping it in January for a match that's not happening until March. So now he's got to wrestle a bunch of bums because that's MJF's typical style. He has to wrestle his opponent has to wrestle back to back and hand-picked opponents and all this kind of stuff. Which, whatever. It's been an MJF staple since he started in this company. But now we know the stipulation, and we know that Danielson's not going to lose to ruin the Iron Man match. We know that's not going to happen. So what drama you could have drug out of this thing, you're already blowing it up. Because we know Danielson's not going to lose. He's not going to lose any of these matches. So we're pretty sure that Danielson's not going to get opponents that are too tough because, Tony Khan likes to protect guys. So I think they said the first opponent is Takeshita or whatever, which is, again, just sprinkling the good match fairy all over everything. There's no reason for these guys to even wrestle except Danielson is fighting for a title match that is pretty much already guaranteed to him. because him and MJF are in a feud, and there's nobody else. There's no other human suitor in this situation chasing the title, which you would think maybe Ricky Starks would be one of these guys, and then you could have had Starks and Danielson in a number one contenders match or something like that, and really put over those guys. And even if Starks has to lose, at least he's going to be in a star-making performance against Danielson, and he gets to work really hard and do something great there. Nope. We're going to have a bevy of weird opponents for Danielson now, who are just going to be, hey, come watch Danielson have a great match with this guy. And I put great in quotations because these matches will not be great. They'll be well-worked matches, but they won't be truly great matches. To me, greatness is a high standard. Most matches are just okay because the athleticism is there, the crowd is into it, that kind of stuff. A truly great match is something that I really need to see again. I feel like you could watch this match 10 years from now and it'll still be very good. I feel like most of these matches, people are captured by the moment. You're like, this is an old-timer. It's like, nah. Or they just get overwhelmed by the fact that these guys are athletic. It's like, well, most of these guys are athletic and they're in shape and they can physically do this stuff. But to me, the match isn't really great. Unless I can go back in 5 years and be like, damn, the storyline's there, the psychology's there, everything's there. Random TV matches are hardly great. So it's like a figure of speech when I say that a TV match is great. And it was last year or something like that. Because 9 times out of 10, I didn't watch it again. And if you told me, hey, you said this match was great, I probably wouldn't even remember it. And that's just me being honest. Because my true definition of greatness is something that you reflect on at some point. It's the same thing like with a great movie. Like nobody thinks this is a great movie while you're watching the movie. You're just into the movie while you're watching the movie. And then you'll tell somebody like, man, that movie was really good. And then a year go by, a couple of months, a year go by, whatever. And you'll go back and be like, damn, this movie was great. Because you've seen it already, but you're still drawn into it. You're still interested. I mean, you guys know what I mean. If you go watch a great movie and you've seen it already, but you still laugh at certain parts, you're still emotionally invested in the stories, even though you know what's going to happen. Scarface is a great movie. Like, I still am moved by what happens to Manolo in that movie, even though I've seen that movie fucking 4,800 times. It's still, you go back and you look at it and you're like, damn, if only Manolo had listened. That's a great movie as far as I'm concerned. Great matches are similar. You would go through a great match and you'll say, this is where he made that mistake. And you'll reflect upon it. Most of these matches I watch on TV, I have no reflection on them outside of doing reviews. I'm not probably ever going to see any of this stuff again. And that's just facts. So I'm not looking forward to Bryan Danielson getting involved in all of these quote unquote great wrestling matches that I'll never see again. It's just useless athletics because there's no storyline involved. I don't care about his opponent. 9 times out of 10, I won't care. And I already know the outcome. I know the outcome before the match happens, let alone watching it in the reflects on it in a year or 2 or 3 or whatever. So the bar of a really great match is pretty high. So how did I get lost in that? Okay, so Danielson is going to be wrestling, guys, up until February. He's going to be wrestling every week. So just get ready for random Bryan Danielson match of the week. And you see they do this stuff. They're doing it with the Elite too. We're going to have a best of 7. They're going to wrestle every goddamn week. And you're like, what? That's complete burnout. Why not at least take some time to build up an opponent for Danielson so this guy at least could come across as even being serious and that Danielson could possibly lose to this guy or whatever the case may be. But no, they're just going to it's going to be like the Pokemon, the Team Rocket opponents or whatever, or, the guys, what was the name? Goldar from fucking Power Rangers or something like that. He's going to have a monster of the week that he's going to knock down, and that's going to be it. They just want to force matches onto you. Now you can't say that there is no reason for this match to happen. Of course there's a reason. Danielson has to win this match to be the number one contender. What happened to your rankings, sir? I thought there were rankings. Nah, the rankings are gone. Okay, dokie. Anyway, let's move on. I've had you guys long enough. Let's try to get through this quickly as possible from this point. Swerve Strickland defeats AR Fox. Another match that was very athletic. Swerve needed a lot of help from from the guys around the ring. They still don't have a name for that ugly dude with the stuff all over his face. I really don't care what his name is, but it would be nice because they kept getting him mixed up with Parker Boudreaux. So maybe they need to know what his name is. They did a athletic stare down spot where AR Fox back flipped off the ring apron and Swerve front flipped from the ring to the floor. And then they were staring at each other. And they kept talking about how these two guys had great feud in Lucha Underground. I was like, come on. I've been down that road before. They're still doing it. You know, they're trying to get clout. So they're like, oh, remember Lucha Underground? We all like that. And I'm just kind of like rolling my eyes like, yeah, sure. We all love Lucha Underground. That's why I went out of business. I like Lucha Underground, though. They actually put forth the effort to tell stories. I didn't like that their matches were edited, which they were. So a lot of people who are like, oh, their matches were so good. I'm like, yeah, you loved the editing in those matches, didn't you? Like when Angelico jumped off that balcony. Great editing. That's part of what made the spot so dope, is that when he jumped, you got to see it from multiple different cuts. That's not happening live. They edited the shit out of those matches. You know, you basically got a really good highlight package. You know, but Lucha Underground was still very fun to watch because they actually cared about characters, they actually cared about stories, unlike AEW. Except for they want the clout though. They want the clout because they got the guys. So Swerve ends up winning this match. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about AR Fox. He doesn't win anyway. So why should you care? Why should you care about AR Fox? There's no reason. The Gun Club or the Gun Boys, whatever they're calling themselves now, because they debuted a new name. They had a funeral for FTR on this show. That, you know, if it was WWE, it probably would have been a lot more fun. But it was a WWE style promo where the Gun Club, the Gun Boys, or whatever they're calling themselves, said that the weak old dad bods of FTR couldn't hang with theirs, and that they destroyed FTR's legacy. And they called themselves the Top Guns to end the promo. And they also teased FTR coming out there, which actually, for somehow, some fans bid on it. It's like, these people are smart. They should know that FTR was in Japan a couple hours ago. There's no way they flew from Japan to goddamn Seattle and is going to appear on this show. The likelihood of that, zero. All right, you know, just the likelihood of that was zilch. They'd probably be jet lagged as all hell. There's just no way. But it was a nice little tease. So the Gun Club or the Gun Boys or the Top Guns, they cut a decent promo. It wasn't bad. I like these guys. They're continuing their feud with FTR. Basically taking credit for FTR falling apart and losing all of their championships, and said that they'll never work in AEW again, which of course means they'll be back in AEW immediately. But I like the Top Guns. I hope they go with the name Top Guns. I hope they trademark it so Tony Khan can't take it from them. I like Top Guns. It seemed like they were looking for an identity. That might be it. Top Guns. Let's go with that. All right. So that seems like Dynamite. Battle of the Belts 5 will be live, and I will not be watching it. I'm going to bed. Kip Sabian is going to be on that show, so I'm going to stay away from that. That show might as well have leprosy, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not going nowhere near it. Is Kip Sabian's wrestling on that show? Pfft, what I need to watch that show for? You just basically advertising me to not watch that show. I would watch anything other than that show because Kip Sabian is on it. Rampage doesn't look that great either. John Moxley's still beating up on Top Flight for no reason. And there's some other shit happening on that show I don't know. I don't care about. So we're all looking forward to Dynamite next week to see how they're going to introduce Mercedes and whether she's going to botch her finish again. But it ought to be exciting. It ought to be an exciting time if you're a fan of AEW for at least up till March. Then we'll see how excited you really are for AEW once Mercedes becomes a regular on the show. So a lot of people are very excited about that. I am very excited for you. I'm always very excited when wrestling fans get what they want, because then I get to see if it's really what they want and how what they want, how it really goes. And since they always begging for the big fish, small pond situation, not really caring that it blows up in their face every single time, I'm interested in how this works out. So Dynamite was okay, I guess. Starks and Jericho was good. The main event, I wanted to like it because I do like Darby, but for fuck's sake, just, you're spitting in my face by having Samoa Joe, get just shit canned like that. That's just not good, and I can't rock with that. Other than that, the show was, it was okay, I guess. But the crowd really, really, really made the show hype, and that's a positive. I wish WWE had live crowds like this, but unfortunately they don't. They keep bringing in those goddamn family audiences who sit on their hands because there's no stars on the show. They don't have people who are willing to clap for fucking Sky Blue, who they just think she's cute, so she's over because she's cute, not because she actually did anything, but because she's cute. WWE fans are a little bit more discerning, and even if you are just cute, that's not enough for you to actually be over. But whatever, the crowd helps, so that's one thing I can't take a shot at AEW for. At least the crowd helps. All right. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you guys. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.